Anytime a new support character gets released, it's always, yo, DPS potential? Look at those ratios, baby. And to that, I would say, let me introduce you to my DPS Fu Xuan. Yeah! My girl's got the biggest crits on the block, and I guarantee you, she's gonna power creep the hell out of viability in the damage dealer class. Hi, I'm Lace. Today, let's talk about Fu Xuan and her infinite possibilities. To start things off, let's talk theory, explore viability, because while some of you may be wondering if I'm on crack, we should understand if I'm just delusional. But take this skill tree for example. There is something on this page that's given me a little bit of a tingly feeling. And it's all of these crit rate traces right here. Boom. And do you know how much crit rate we are actually going to get in total? 16%. My guys, this is proof that HoYoverse wants us to play her as a DPS. And look, there's literally no other explanation for this. Heals can't crit, shields can't crit, but you know what can? Damage. And so with that in mind, let's have a look at that basic attack. And the first thing that I would like to point out is that it's called Nova Burst. That's literally the name that you give to a DPS's skill. And this thing scales off of 50% of Fu Xuan's HP. Okay, so if we take the pre-multiplier damage, meaning for identical teams attacking an identical enemy, which means before any buffs, any mitigations and all of that, a Fu Xuan that has about 6k HP, her pre-multiplied damage would just simply come to 3k. Now, that doesn't sound that impressive, but if I compare that to a 3k attack Zilla who scales on 100% attack for her basic attack, that's 3k damage as well. That's equivalent. However, my guys, it does fall apart when I compare her to Blade, because his enhanced basic attack scales on 130% of his HP to the main target, as well as 52% to the side ones. So to be honest, things aren't looking too hot, but what about the skill? Unfortunately, this bad boy doesn't directly do any damage, but it does activate the matrix of prescience, which gives everyone 12% crit and 6% HP, which means that not only does she get more tankier, but she also does more damage. Now, the next few effects are pretty interesting. The first is that she redirects 65% of the damage her allies would take to herself. And my first instinct was like, what? Does that mean that she's gonna actually charge energy super fast for her big damage ultimate? Unfortunately, that doesn't work. However, the next effect is really nice, because if Matrix of Prescience is already active and she uses her skill again, then she restores 20 additional energy, which is fantastic because more energy means more ultimates, and more ultimates means more damage and team-wide heals. And so the last effect is that the skill also gives a team-wide CC debuff resist once. Now, as you can imagine, this is super important for all characters, not only DPSs, because hard CC sucks. But it does cost 1 SP. Now, some of you are gonna moan at this SP. Don't forget, we also get 20 energy from it. So to be fair, blocking a whole action's CC, as well as getting 20 energy for 1 SP, I would probably take that. All right, and so the last thing we're going to cover is her ultimate. 100% scaling on HP as quantum damage. Restores one of those charges that you see on her bar, and also with an ascension, heals her team as well. Unfortunately, those charges don't actually do damage, but if her HP falls to less than 50%, then she restores 95% of the HP she's currently missing with the backflip thing. Now, there is one last thing to talk about, and it's that by just existing, she gives everybody 22% damage reduction, which is pretty freaking massive if you were playing her as a sustainer. And look, dead DPS is no DPS, so I think we can only be grateful for this one. And I usually cover Eidelons at the end, but I need you to see this because E6 literally screams DPS. For her E1, she makes it so that her skill not only gives HP and crit rate, but also crit damage as well. That's freaking big. E2 is kind of like your classic resurrection, nice quality of life, but whether you play her as a DPS or a sustain, this is certainly not something I would go crazy over, not like viability's E2. E4 is nice because you're getting extra energy back from your teammates getting hurt, which means you're going to be able to ult more often, which means they're going to get healed more. That's fantastic. But E6, my guys, look at this thing. Whilst her matrix field is on the ground, she keeps track of all of the HP that has been lost by her team, and then her ult damage scales based on that lost HP. That's pretty much Blade's ultimate. Like, What? There is no way that you can tell me that Fu Xuan wasn't made to be a DPS. Like, this is irrevocable evidence. There is no reason why you would give this thing to a tank. So, I probably just spent half of the video trying to justify something that we all in our hearts want. But the reality is that sure, Zila's basic attack only has 100% scaling, but she also has crazy damage buffs and offensive capabilities from the rest of her kit. Blade we already saw, his scaling in terms of his HP into damage is significantly better than Fu Xuan's. And so then that begs the question, should we actually try to run a DPS Fu Xuan? And so despite all of these like random damage things, like her crit rate at 16% naturally and her E6, I still think that the answer is going to be a no. And the reasons kind of go beyond the ones that we were just talking about. All right, let's take a pure sustained Fu Xuan, for example. This is what you're going to be looking at for gear. HP chest, speed or HP boots, depending on your preference, HP orb, and ERR rope for the fast ults. In terms of the set effects, you're looking at 2-piece wuthering, which gives you that damage reduction, and another 2-piece of your choice, whether it's speed from messenger, HP from longevity, or defense from the creepy smile one. I personally am always a big fan of speed, and getting the Fu Xuan faster than your DPSs means that your DPSs get to benefit from the crit rate earlier, only on the first turn though. And for the trinkets, we're going to be looking at either Keel or Fleet. Now, 2 things. The first is stacking HP. This is actually not optimal because, like most things in this game, there are diminishing returns. This means that we should balance out the HP and defense to have a higher level of effective HP. That is the true amount of damage that our Fu Xuan can take. Now, there are arguments for and against this. Stacking HP means that your team-wide heals will be bigger. Stacking defense means that your Fu Xuan herself will be able to tank better. And generally speaking, there are 2 points of failures for Fu Xuan. Either her team dies first because she couldn't self-sustain everyone, or she dies first because she couldn't take all of the damage that was coming in, or she was CC'd and can't do the backflip thing. Generally speaking, a fully built Fu Xuan with like the damage reduction as well as the backflip, she is going to be able to solo sustain her entire team throughout most available content, given that you don't stall too hard. I'm talking like if you're going to take 15 to 20 rounds in MOC, that is like honestly a lot of time. All right, well then in that case, let's talk about the latter situation. There are probably only 1 or 2 enemies in this whole game right now that I'm scared of when it comes to Fu Xuan soaking the massive AoE damage. And sure, you can absolutely break these enemies before they get those massive attacks off. But what if you can't? You'd rather be safe and be able to tank it. And so for the really hard content, I would recommend prioritizing pure defensive stats, not only HP and defense, but also effect resist, because we always want that backflip to go off. In my opinion, this is probably the best way to make her as perfect as possible. However, for content outside of that, I think you can actually get away with running crit. Like I ran that crit team through Swarm Disaster and I still picked up like the abundance and all of the damage reduction stuff, and I was able to get to the end and actually finish it. And so yes, I definitely think that you can get away with running some crit, but unfortunately it's kind of like, okay, well, do you want to do a minuscule more bit of damage from your Fu Xuan, or do you want to kind of like guarantee survivability? Both the theory and the performance of it just doesn't make sense. So I'm unfortunately not going to be able to recommend it. And so another contentious topic is the light cones. It's generally accepted that she can actually use most of them, but in terms of what's the best light cone after the signature one, that's still being heavily debated. The signature is obviously the best, but otherwise the texture of memories, the Herta light cone, is actually fantastic because of the effect resistance, the HP scaling shield, as well as the damage reduction. Remember, we want balance, and this bad boy we can get up to S5 because it's super free to play friendly, because we're actually able to grind this one out. On the other hand, Moment of Victory is fantastic because it gives defense, remembering my guys what I said about the diminishing returns. But the other awesome thing about it is the chance for the wearer to be attacked by enemies. And having this aggro on Fu Xuan I think is incredibly awesome, because those 2 points of failures that I mentioned before, where either her team dies first or she dies first, this light cone makes it so that it's much more likely that we're going to encounter the second situation. And with the backflip thing, she is not going to be dying. And so that effect, as well as the damage reduction in Landau's choice, makes this one also super good. And so to be honest, we're essentially saying that she's going to benefit from all of the stats: damage reduction, defense, HP, effect resist. Then in that case, then like every single lightcone we see here is going to be extremely viable. But what I do have to say is that there is one that stands out. It may not be the best one, but it stands out. And it's this one right here, day 1 of my new life. And the reason that it stands out is because it gives all type resistance to all of the allies. And this damage resistance right here is probably the most rare defensive stat we can actually find. And so yeah, if your team is like fully jacked up on defense and HP and all that, this would probably change the equation quite a fair bit. However, by default, I am probably going to recommend the Texture of Memories right here because of its higher base stats, the effect resist, yada yada yada. But the main reason being that it is super free to play friendly because it's earnable. It's just all in all such a great package. And then lastly, in terms of Eidelons, there is only one that I really like, and that's the E4, where she gains the ability to regenerate energy when she redirects the damage to herself. Otherwise, I guarantee you she is going to work very, very, very well at E0. So yeah, I'm going to be honest, I got baited pretty hard when I saw those crit rate traces. And when I saw the Eidelon, I was like, oh my god, this could be a thing. But really, I think we can only treat it as a bonus. And so let me know if you went ahead and pulled for the Fu Xuan and how many pulls it took. But on top of that, let me know if you also tried to give her her DPS build a go. Regardless, that is going to bring us to the end of this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.